Welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Jason Gilbo, J. Gilbo11. With me is Russell Clay, at Russell J. Clay. Taking a look at a small four-game slate for tonight. Interesting one because, you got really above-average pitching on the hill outside of really Miguel Gonzalez and Chacin there. So, pretty heavy pitching slate.
Unless it was a late slate or an early slate or something like that, we haven't seen many four-game main slates. So if you don't normally play those sort of random turbos and late-night expresses and other train references, I think you'll be in store for an interesting night. It's definitely just a tournament night for me. I don't see the upside of playing cash, but it should be a fun one. Like you mentioned, there are some nice pitching options.
Yeah, definitely. In Yankees-Red Sox pitching today, Eduardo Rodriguez and Michael Pineda. Stephen Wright was originally going to go, but now Rodriguez is in play. Looking at this game as far as hitters go, I like both sides of the plate against Pineda. He's pretty average against both sides, but obviously when he's on, he can shut down an offense. So, as you mentioned, kind of a GPP night, so I'm kind of approaching this game really just in a GPP sense as well.
Right. In reference to the Yankees, the prices are cheap, and just based on kind of what I've looked through, you're either paying up big time or it's just not going to make sense. Like you're not going at a lineup that is necessarily one that you would want to play, So I think mixing and matching, and I'm okay with some of the guys in this Yankees lineup for sure.
Yeah, with Rodriguez on the hill, Rodriguez is a guy who has kind of figured things out a little bit since he's come back from the minor league stint. But yeah, I don't mind kind of a couple of bats there, like a Starlin Castro, 2,500. I'm also curious to see what other right-handers they throw up into the middle or top of that lineup would also come into play. I'm not really looking at the lefties. I just think given that their prices are close to some other guys I want to use, I'm kind of staying away from the Ellsbury and Gardner group.
And I think we have to look at A-Rod at 28 now. That's kind of the guy I was thinking about. Obviously, not hitting well. Going to be pretty much done here soon. So, but other than that, I definitely think some of these guys are in tournament play, especially the cheaper options.
Yeah, Rodriguez 2,200 is a guy who, obviously you're building the narrative around him. Riding out into the sunset. Could he do it at Fenway Park? And it's something that just because it's fun. Obviously, he gets a lefty in a friendly, right-handed ballpark. It's something to consider.
Anything based on 2016, you're not touching him. But he's got that history, bro.
The narrative. It's the narrative. That's the thing that we
anecdotal. He's going to be trying harder today, so keep that in mind.
As far as the Red Sox, they lost Mookie Betts and David Ortiz last night. Both left the game for injury. Both are expected to be minor, but obviously it was something that could be a day-to-day situation. This lineup looks not good without them.
Hey, shout out to Cafe Value though. I gotta give it up to Andrew Benintendi. Been on him the past few days, so.
And I like him tonight. Especially if he was to move up into the top half of the lineup, which I doubt that's the case. But he's a guy who I will look to use as far as value goes.
For sure. And like you mentioned, pretty much all the expensive guys are out of this lineup. So it's certainly not quite as appealing. But, the Brock Holt, the Jackie Bradleys of the world kind of move up in the order and become a little more appealing. So I'm okay with those guys. I think you can make a Red Sox stack tonight and be, slightly contrarian, but at the same time, there's only 8 games. I think they are one of the better offenses, sort of. And
there's 4 games. Just 4.
What did I say?
8.
8 teams. I meant 8 teams. But I'm lost now, but basically the point is there's only 8 teams, so there's not really, in terms of stacking, there's not really that many options.
No, definitely not. And I think the Indians are going to be one of the popular stacks. And I don't mind Hanley Ramirez tonight, just because that ISO has picked up in the second half. I mean, he's sitting at 257, and with Pineda with a 1.49 home runs per nine to righties since 2015, I'm okay with using him. Obviously, a Bogarts, Pedroia, that tier is still kind of the main focal point of the offense, 2, 3, 4 there.
Definitely.
So. Angels and Indians next. Corey Kluber versus Chassin. I love the Indians' bats here, and really kind of top through bottom is a team that I'm looking to use. And if I'm paying up, it's probably going to be for Jason Kipnis. He's going to be that stud guy that I'm looking to pay up over nearly 4K for. And then obviously you have your Carlos Santana, Francisco Lindor, and then your value in Chisenhall there.
I mean, it's going to be tough for me to build lineups on FanDuel and not at least have shares of this offense somewhere along the line. I mean, even the Chisenhall, Naquin, we've talked about that quite a bit this year. They're pretty cheap. I'm not afraid of Chassin. So, yeah, and I mean, especially the top four in that order is going to be lethal. Obviously projected for 5 runs. I think everything adds up for Cleveland to be the top stack of the night.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Chassin 355 Woba to lefties, 37% hard ball rate. I mean, those are not good numbers to have against a heavy lefty team like Cleveland. So I'm definitely all in on them tonight. They're a team that I'm going to be focused on. Definitely my favorite team to kind of just build around in general.
And yeah, and even if you don't have a stack of them in your lineup, you might want to think about just sneaking a guy in there randomly, pretty much regardless of where you go with your lineup.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of hard to avoid them in general. Like you just don't want to be left out of any Indians.
Oh.
And as far as the Angels go, I mean, I'm not really looking to pick on Kluber. They have one of the lower run totals of the night. I mean, the lowest of the 8 teams. So I'm just kind of staying away from the Angels.
Yeah, Calhoun got his 1 homer of the last, 1 homer per 20 games. So he's all set. And I mean, other than Trout, what really is there? So I like Kluber, cash game arm. Pretty much going to lock him in.
Yeah, definitely.
Fairly confidently, honestly.
Yeah. Cardinals and Cubs next here. John Lester versus Carlos Martinez. Cubs projected for 5 runs against a good right-hander, but obviously they always have some potential. I'm definitely going to cool it on saying that they're going to be an immediate offense to target, but obviously because they still own those big names and still have those high upside plays, I'm definitely okay with using Bryant and Rizzo still.
For sure. I mean, in terms of just overall stacks of the night, I think the Cubs are solid. It's just I kind of like Carlos Martinez too. So it's tough to say, but I think Martinez is a pretty solid tournament play. So overall, and based on these prices, I'm probably going to be staying away from the Cubs more than I initially wanted to. But yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, Rizzo and Bryant obviously still in play. Zobrist is the guy I'm looking at there that I'd be willing to throw in pretty much regardless. Beyond that, though, I guess we're looking at Javier Baez at the end of the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I like the Zobrist price tag at 3,200. Dexter Fowler was a guy who I was wishing to be a little bit cheaper, but he's not. And I think because Chris Bryant and Rizzo are such elite bats that you can't really overlook them, even though it's not a perfect matchup for the Cubs, just because the slate's a little bit limited.
Right.
As far as the Cardinals, I mean, I'm not really looking to get a ton of exposure to them. But Jed Jerko, 2,400, Stephen Piscotty, 3K, given their success against left-handers in the fact that it is a 4-game slate, if you want to make a little bit of a difference, those are probably the 2 I look to use.
Yeah, and while Lester hasn't given up that crazy game this year, he has shown signs. I mean, he did get beat up once versus the Mets, but I mean, he has had a few games where he kind of gets beat up. And it's not like this Cardinals is a weak team, so I think this is an interesting leverage sort of play. Maybe grab a Piscotty, like you mentioned, or a Matt Holliday, and sort of. And not necessarily fully stack, but have one of those guys in your lineup just in case, Lester has an off day. And I think that's one of the things you have to really take into account when you're doing tournaments on 4 gamers. Like, you got to hedge at some point going down the line of lineups. So I think a Cardinal stack, I mean, certainly not out of the realm of possibility on this type of slate.
No, I don't think so either. And working in guys like a Jerko or Piscotti, if you want to work them into a Cleveland stack, it's a good way to kind of be a little bit different, to kind of mix and match with. You got to expect Cleveland to be pretty chalky tonight.
Yeah.
White Sox and Royals here, Danny Duffy versus Miguel Gonzalez, and I'm a fan of the Royals bats at their prices. I really like most of these guys up in the top of the lineup. You look at Miguel Gonzalez, I mean, average against both sides of the plate, 3.37 woba to lefties, 1.42 homes per nine. That's a pretty solid number to target guys like Eric Hosmer or a Morales if you wanted to be a little bit different. Alex Gordon, and I also like the righties. I like Kane and Perez too.
Yeah, that pretty much says it all. Kane and Hosmer are the guys I'm zeroing in on. Obviously, you like those prices, and I think they're pretty versatile in terms of where they fit in. With no Ortiz and really just Rizzo on the slate in terms of first baseman, I like Hosmer as sort of the contrarian tournament move.
Yeah, I mean,
But I mean, in terms of this lineup, I think you can. It's really versatile tonight, so I think you can look through the 1 through 6, and as you mentioned, even Alex Gordon. So I think they're all in play, and they all have relatively solid like salaries. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, the prices are pretty valuable there. As far as the White Sox side, I mean, I view them much similar to how I view the Cardinals as far as just being leverage plays. So I really don't mind a couple of righties. I don't mind Melky Cabrera, Jose Abreu, Todd Frazier if you wanted to be different. But obviously, the way Danny Duffy's pitching, it's obviously a lower floor. But given those guys, I mean, Frazier's success against lefties, I'm okay with using the right-handers there as far as kind of trying to be a little bit contrarian.
yeah, I agree.
So that's going to wrap things up with the FanDuel Punch Out. Be sure to check out DaveFantasyCafe.com for all great tools and content.